Hey, MissFlame here. In this video, I'm going to show you how I paint Nelly from Zombicide Black Plague. This is the third hero I'll paint from Zombicide Black Plague. When I play the board game, I have some people that really like to play Nelly, so I figured I'll paint her next. The part from her that I want to stand out is her hair. I will give her this nice popping orange hair color, which will make it super easy to see on the board where she is and what she is doing. From Vallejo I have this very bright orange color. I can't wait to use it. It might be a bit too much for her, but let's find out. I primed the miniature in the color matte white from the army painter. Before I did that, I washed the miniature with warm water and dishwasher soap to make sure the primer stays on well. For the skirt I used the color Plague Brown from Vallejo. I will need 2 layers to get good coverage. I prefer to paint with a thin layer of paint. Depending on the color of the paint and the color of the primer, I will need 1 or 2 layers of paint to make it look good. Also keep in mind that some colors cover better than others. This is an easy step. All you need to do is to make sure the skirt is fully painted. Make sure to also paint the bottom of the skirt. For the face I use the colors Pale Flash with Brown Sand from Vallejo. I'll mix these colors with a 50-50 ratio. So I'll mix in 1 drop of Pale Flash with 1 drop of Brown Sand. I'll apply the color on the face, hands and feet. The way she's holding her sword, it is actually a bit more tricky to get the paint on her face and chest. I found it easier to do to paint her skin before I paint the other areas. If you get the paint on the other parts, it doesn't matter yet, because we will paint them later on anyways. For the leather vest and the shoes, I use the color Black Red from Vallejo. I'll apply 2 layers to get good coverage. I think this color goes very well with the color of the skirt. I like the darker red-brown color. This is a darker color and we will paint some areas around it with a white color. Therefore, try not to get too much paint on the other areas. This will make painting the white color a little bit more easy. For her hair I use the colors Dwarf Skin with Orange Fire from Vallejo. I mix these colors with a 50-50 ratio. So also here I use 1 drop of Dwarf Skin with 1 drop of Orange Fire. She will still have a popping orange hair color. I found the Orange Fire a bit too much. That's why I mix it with the Dwarf Skin to tone it a bit down. For the blouse, details on the leather vest and the apron I use the color Off-White from Vallejo. The white primer is a nice color to paint on. It is a very bright white color. On miniatures I always like to go at least with the color Off-White, as I do here. When you paint the details on the leather vest, use a little bit of paint on your brush. Then go over the raised areas with your brush. This way it will be more easy to do. For the dagger and sword grip I use the color Beasty Brown from Vallejo. The dagger is easy to reach and paint. To paint the sword grip was a little harder. The areas to paint are pretty small and you need to watch out to not paint over the hands. When I was painting I figured It would be easier to do if I paint the grip before I paint the hands, but it was a little late for that. Oh well. For the sword hilt and details of the dagger I use the color Polished Gold from Vallejo. The areas to paint are pretty small but easy to reach. For the blade of the sword, I use the color Chainmail Silver from Vallejo. I use 2 thin layers on the blade to get good coverage. All the base colors have been applied to the miniature. The next step is to apply the shade. For the skin, I'm going to use the shade Reikland Fleshshade from Citadel. I'm using a 2:1 ratio of shade with water. So I will use 2 drops of shade with 1 drop of water and mix it well. I use this shade on the face, hands and feet of the miniature. For most of the miniature, I use the shade Agrax Earthshade from Citadel. I use it on the clothes and her hair. I use a 2:1 ratio of shade with water, with 2 drops of shade with 1 drop of water. Make sure to mix it. I start by applying it to the skirt. I will apply a thicker layer to the skirt and hair. And since I don't want the white areas to be too dark, I will apply a thinner layer to those areas. I will not use as much there, and when needed, I will remove any excess. For the blade of the sword, I use Nuln Oil from Citadel. I will use straight Nuln Oil out of the bottle. I will only apply it to the middle part of the blade on both sides. For the skin, I use brown sand with pale flash from Vallejo. I use a 50-50 ratio of 1 drop of brown sand with 1 drop of pale flash. I found the face pretty hard to reach and therefore I use it on most of the face. With her hands, I try to avoid to get the paint between the fingers. I also use 2 dots of black on the eyes to indicate the pupils. To make that easier, paint the black dot first on her left side. For the skirt, I will use the color Plague Brown from Vallejo. I will start by painting the raised areas first and go from there. This way I can more easily see what areas need to be painted. For the skirt, I found that the shade could be even darker than how it turned out. I thought on some areas the shade was a bit too light. On those parts, I went back with the shade to make it darker. For the clothes, in the color Off-White, I did not do that. When you apply the shade, I recommend to apply a thicker layer on the skirt. For her hair, I use the colors Dwarf Skin with Orange Fire from Vallejo. I will use the same 50-50 ratio as I did with the base color. I will use a thin layer and will apply it on some raised areas of the hair. I'll paint small parts and only raised parts. I want the darker color in the recess. Even with the shade, the orange color is pretty bright. To give her hair more variation in color, I picked out some areas to paint over. The hair will be darker in the recess Then you have the darker orange from the shade and some parts with the base color again. For the apron, blouse and details on the leather vest, I use the color Off-White from Vallejo. I use a thin layer and start with the raised areas. I want to keep the recesses with the darker color. Try to go with the flow of the apron and where the light would fall. Paint the areas first, where you're sure that need the lighter color. While painting, I keep looking at the miniature from a small distance to see where I want to paint next. This helps me a lot to figure out what parts to paint or not. For the sword, I use the color Silver from Vallejo. I will apply a thin layer of silver to only the upper side of the sword on both sides. The upper side will catch the most light from the sun. To apply the silver there will make it a bit more shiny than the bottom part of the sword. For the base, I will use the colors Thar Brown with Mojave White and Brown Gray from scale 75. I'll paint the base the same way as the other heroes. I'll first apply 2 layers of a 50-50 mix of Thar Brown and Mojave White. I apply this on the whole base. After that, I will use Brown Gray to paint the patterns of the stone on the base. This is pretty easy to do. I will need to turn the miniature around a bit to get good angles. The bottom of her skirt is pretty big. For the last details on the base, I use the colors Off-White from Vallejo and Hykey Yellow and Arbuckles Brown from scale 75. I will use the Off-White and Hykey's Yellow to paint 3 to 4 stones on the base in that color. This matches a bit the colors in the artwork and makes all the bases a bit more unique and special. For the side of the base, I use the color Arbuckle Brown. Let the brush and angles work for you. I paint the side of the base with the side of my brush. I use 2 thin layers. I found it easier to paint to apply first one thin layer and over that another thin layer. This is the miniature after we have painted the base. She is almost done. First, I will let the paint dry for at least 24 hours. Then I will use the Quickshade in the color Strong Tone from the Army Painter on the base. I will not use it on the rest of the miniature, just the base. The Quickshade will darken the colors. I paint the base for all the miniatures of this game the same way. After letting the Quickshade dry for at least 48 hours, I use the Anti-Shine Matte Varnish from the Army Painter. This will make sure the paint stays on well when we play the game. So that's how I paint Nelly from Zombicide Black Plague. I really like how she looks now. Always when I think of Nelly, I think of her orange hair color, and now she finally has it. You can clearly see from a distance that this is her, without a doubt. When we play the game with the unpainted heroes, we keep asking each other the same question. What color are you using and where are you? Who are you playing as? If somebody replies, I am playing as Nelly, I still had the follow-up question, so where do you stand on the board? Are you next to me? It's actually nice that the game comes with these different colors of bases that you can put on the heroes. To say I am playing as the yellow color, for example. But I still find it very hard to see where everybody is, because We play with different kind of people and use different colors. Now that I have painted my third hero of the game, it already gets much easier to see where the heroes are and who is playing which. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. What do you think of Nelly with her popping orange hair? I love it. Let me know.